Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we are diving back into our Sin series by Aletha Romig. Now, if you haven't listened to book one, that link is going to be available down below in the description section. Once you finish that review, come and join us as we dive into book two, which is called Green Envy. We pick up right where we left off, which is X, who's Madison, and he said my wife, and now there's silence. She's a little frozen. She's got a ton of thoughts running through her head. It's like, okay, are you like married? Is this present tense? Were you married? He says to her, I've never been married. She's like, but I saw that picture in your office. He says, it's not what you thought. It's not what you think you saw. And she's like, but I know what I saw. He's like, it's not what you think. He's like, I haven't lied to you. Um, I have never asked anyone to marry me but you. The name Madison is like the opposite of the name Sherman. So Sherman is his triumph. It's his constant reminder of what he did. And Madison is also a reminder of what he did, but it's punishment. So it's all this cryptic crap, he's talking. She of course wants a straight answer, but then he keeps saying to her, you know, trust me. And he tells her, like, I'm not giving you up, and she's like, I'm not leaving. I never said I was leaving. I wasn't even thinking about leaving. But she does want answers. And he just keeps coming with the, trust me, trust me. So, I don't know. I just felt like that's a lot to ask of a person. Even though they are moving at like lightning speed, it still is a lot to ask of a person. I feel like you gotta give me some more. Like, there's just not this, just trust me. Like, I just don't think that's just a lot to ask, you know? But I kind of feel like this is almost playing, I don't know, I could be wrong, but I kind of playing on the idea she was in that relationship before. She wasn't asking questions, right? And now it's like you're asking her to go back and kind of do the same thing again. Like, don't ask questions right now. You have doubts and you have reasonable doubts, right? There's some things that have presented themselves that don't make this look as if I've been forthright with you. But just trust me. That just kind of to me sounds like Skylar. And he was a douche bag. So I'm just like, you know, maybe you need to give her a little bit more than what you're giving. She doesn't demand the truth. She just says to him, I trust you. Okay. So then he tells her to give him her hands. And he says to her again, like, do you trust me? And she's like, yes, I do. So then he has her sit in a chair and he winds up tying her hands behind her back with a bell. And then he has her spread her legs and I think at this point he had already gotten her naked. So then he starts eating her pussy. And after that, he asks her if she's hungry. And he's like, you need your strength for what we do next. So then he feeds her. And then, like, between the two of them eating, they had their dinner and wine. And so some wine dribbled down. He licked it off of her. It was just really erotic. And so I was like, this has got to be the most erotic holiday meal. So then afterwards, he has her gets up and he told her she could open her eyes, but he still had her hands behind her back. And then he told her to bend over the table. So then he gives her a really hard fuck. And he had already made her come like so many times after that, and he ate her pussy again. It was crazy. So she had like a ton of orgasms. And by the time he fucked her on the table, she was spent, And he, of course, was saying to her throughout how perfect she was and all this type of crap. And in her mind, he fixed the snow globe because their life to her is this perfect snow globe where they don't have to deal with stuff. And that's probably why she was okay with not trying to get more information, because she didn't really want that snow globe to be cracked. We then switch to Van's POV. He goes back about 20 years. So this, of course, is when he's starting out in this biz. He had a little money, but it was always really stretched because he was always investing in new things. So he knew the future was the internet. So he invested a lot in web-based companies. He knew that, people just like him needed more, wanted more. You create a program, you come out with an update in 6 months, people are going to want it because they want the latest, people want more. And so it's either, I don't know if it's midday or night, one of them, but he's at a coffee shop. A woman comes in, she strikes him, she looks kind of sad, and he winds up saying something pretty much like, you shouldn't be out by yourself, right? Like you could get kidnapped. And she, of course, is like, has her cell phone out, and she says, I know the owner, so I'm not worried about that. And he said, I could easily get you in the parking lot. And she's like, oh, so you've been thinking about this. So he's like, I wasn't, but now I am. So then she's reading Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, and he names the author, and she's impressed. And he knows that I'm sorry, he knows about it because he's read it, the book and everything. So they have a little slight conversation about that. And she says it's a requirement, wouldn't be something she would want to do. She would rather, be painting, but course requirement, she's got to read it. So then she introduces herself, and she says her name is Madison. And he says his name is Donovan, but people or my friends call me Van. And she says, well, I'm not your friend. And he says, not yet. We stay with Dan's POV. Um, and then we are back to the present. He goes into the office. It is the day after Christmas. He's like the only one there. He checks his email. He sees that he has something from Marlon Butler. So the email is basically saying, that he knows he figured about him being, interested in Wave Pharmaceuticals and all that type of crap, and that Skylar told him about possibly buying their shares. In the email, he's like, this isn't a conversation we can have via, written. So why don't you come to Chicago to meet me in person, look me in my face, so we can have this discussion. And he also says, I'm not going to give you any information about the company dealing with the Alzheimer's drug research. So our boy Van knows that Marlon was trying to acquire another 10 shares. And he gets an email from Jeremy, who gives him, he's like a great finance guy, gets all the intel. He says those 10 shares are split between three different corporations. The Aphrodite Corporation, Green Sphere, and I want to say Wolf Industries or something like that. He knows who Aphrodite Corporation is, and so he sends a message to Jeremy, kind of like, why didn't she just tell me? And he says she wanted your attention. Oh gosh. So Aphrodite Corporation is Lena Montgomery. So he calls her, and she's like, look's what it takes. Look what I got to do basically to get you to talk to me, because it's been weeks. And he, of course, is like, I see you bought some into Wade Pharmaceuticals. And she's like, well, what was your reason? And she's like, well, I'm down for anything to take down the Butlers. You know that. Why wouldn't you tell me about this? And she also is like, you haven't said anything about the woman either. He does admit that he loves Julia. And she's like, oh, wow. So then she must be into kink or something in order to tie you down. So I say, oh, he freaky. And she's like, well, do you think maybe she'd be down for a threesome? And he just kind of bulldozed away from that question. Because in his mind, he's like, I'm not sharing her with anybody, He damn sure wasn't going to talk about his sex life with Julia to her. So she, of course, brought it back to Julia and was like, we should be introduced. I mean, I could be like a big sister to her. And the first thought he had was, you already have a little sister. But he doesn't say that to her. So then she tells him that she spoke with Logan because he had called her. And so she knows about the Alzheimer's drug research and stuff like that. And that apparently Logan, Butler, and Philip are working together. And they clearly want to take down Van. So I'm like, what did he do to his brother that his brother's willing to team up with like enemy number one? I'm like, okay, what exactly happened? He doesn't say what he did, and Lena doesn't either. But Lena does say, I mean, you are kind of the reason for his downfall. I say, well, damn. Van is just like, we all make our own decisions, and you got to live with them. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is getting interesting. So he knows that Lena is she's a formidable opponent. She's a great alliance, but you don't want to cross her because she can get you. She's good at what she does, so she of course is like, let's just go in together. She's like, I can probably get more information on whoever the Green Sphere person is. Um, they're being really aggressive and trying to get more shares. So she's like, maybe I can work something out with them. If we work together, we'll have the majority. Together we can see Wade thrive, you know? And at the same time, we can, put it to the Butlers. So this looks like a good deal, you know? He tells her he does want to save it for Julia. And, he's already hated the Butlers, so taking them out and making them fall is like, just icing on the cake. But he genuinely wants this to succeed because of Julia. So he's still a little leery of doing this with her. And again, I'm like, okay, if y'all are supposed to be friends, don't get it twisted. I know you can have friends and you can know their, strengths and weaknesses and know not to do certain things with them. But I don't know. It just seems a little weird. But then again, we don't know the dynamic of what happened with Madison. That is Lena's younger sister. We don't know what he did with Philip. So there's too many variables, you know, to say he should just jump into this deal. Because clearly there's more crap behind all of this. We switch back to Julia. She's researching. She's looking at all the different articles from when Van took over the Sherman store. The press was brutal. Um, she knows how it turned out, but like as she's reading it, she wants him to win so bad because the press was just that awful to him. Doorbell rings. Never happened since she's been there. She gets a call. It's Van letting her know Margaret is bringing her some stuff. So she goes, opens the door. Margaret's got a bunch of bags. Fifth Avenue, Henry Bendel. And she's like, oh my gosh, like, what is this? And Margaret's like, well, he had me do some online shopping for you. There's some boutiques in Ashland, but these are, a lot of high-end places that she was able to order a lot of stuff online. And so she brought the stuff over so she could kind of look through it to see what she wanted. And what she didn't, she returned it. And so Margaret is older than her, but younger than her parents. And because Margaret's like married with a kid, she was happy to get out of the house because the kid was playing the video game and her husband was working in his workshop. So she was just happy to have like some girl time. So they had some coffee. Um, she did ask because she had wondered what, you know, Paula and Margaret had thought of her and stuff like that. And she was like, we're rooting for you, you know? So they're very much on her team. They just want him to be happy. That's it. So they're about to go up to the room, start looking through the different stuff, and then she had already seen that there were some lace panties. Of course, Van had picked those out. And then Van comes home, and so Margaret leaves, and he tells her he's going to make the balloon payment of the $750,000 tomorrow as soon as the bank's open. And then he tells her that in like, I think it's 60 days, he'll make the other $750,000 um, balloon, the other payment. And she, of course, is like, have you drawn up an agreement, for like, us paying you back and things like that? And he's like, I'll show you. I have it on my computer. I'll show you. So then he tells her they've got to go to Chicago. She doesn't want to go. This is technically the time she would have been getting married. So, of course, she has no freaking desire to go to Chicago, but he tells her, we need to go. And she needs to go and take her rightful place at this company. And so she's nervous, but she's also a little excited, but it's more nerves than anything. Poor girl. They get to the tarmac, about to board the private plane. Plane says Sherman and Madison. That name tugs at her. She feels like it shouldn't, but it does. Um, Throughout the night, they like fuck throughout the night and stuff like that. And that made her, of course, that settled her a little bit more. But seeing that name, it rattles her. But again, if you needed the answers then, he should have provided the answers then. But she bucked and she caved and she was like, it's okay, I trust you. So now you sitting up here looking at a name, feeling some type of way with no answers. And I'm like, that's your fault. So there's this very small crew. So there's not like a massive amount of people, as there shouldn't really be. I mean, it's just the two of them traveling, and they're only going to Chicago, so that's probably less than an hour. Um, it's a wife and husband. The husband's the pilot. The wife is the, I guess, flight attendant. They used to work for a commercial airline, but this right here, this job allows them to travel together, which is sweet. Um, they have a little chit chat back and forth. Her and Van. Children come up, and we find out he is open to having children with her. And she was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know you would be interested." I'm like, "But he's 41. Like he doesn't have any. So yeah, he'll probably still be interested in it." Um she They talked about her parents, and she doesn't want to stay with them, which works out. He got them a hotel in downtown Chicago, and that works out great for her because again, she does not want to stay with her parents. Um, he also is very encouraging to her, letting her know, listen, yes, you may be innocent in some regards, but you also are fierce, and the same way you talk to them in Ashland, you were self assured. Do the same thing. Speak with passion. You should, and they'll listen to you. You want to take a more active role in Wade, and you should. And just be aware, Marlon Butler is going to try and ambush you when you get there. She asks the question, why would he try and ambush me? He tells her that basically when they found some more information. So there has been a filing that was done on December 23rd by a law firm named Abbott and something out of Chicago. And the law firm is challenging the will of her grandfather, Herman. So she remembers some things in class, and how in order to challenge it, it's got to be like mental instability, things like that. Or if there was some possible way that he didn't know what he was signing, something. But she was like, but how is that possible when they've been abiding by that will for over 10 years? Why is it now being challenged? So he told her, like, you not marrying Skylar messed up a lot of stuff. And so he's got to find a way to get back. So he thinks Marlon is the one that's filing this lawsuit, and he's doing it through this law firm because clearly he can't use in-house counsel. But he's trying to get back control of the company. So he's like, the best way to do it is to, take a jab at a possible, you know, mental state of Herman to void that will, which remember that will gives her the majority, the shares to her. So, you know, of course he's going to try that. If you found out someone was being sneaky and deceitful to someone they've known for over 30 years that they're supposed to be friends with, why would you ever be shocked? This is where that naive, foolishness comes into play with her. Because the whole thing of why would he come after me? Girl, why would you be shocked? But this is, I don't know, this is why when you shelter people, this is why it's a bad thing, because then they have to go into a wool of dens and they don't know how to fucking defend themselves. Thankfully, she's going in there with the wolf and he can help her guide her through this. But if she didn't have Van, she'd be fucked. There's no way around that. She would be completely fucked because she has no idea. She's still moving with the information of what she knew of these people since she was a child. And she's not realizing these people are not who they have claimed to be. She's going to try and have a meeting with her father. She's going to send him that little private cryptic email so they can meet for about 15 minutes before the start of the meeting. And he's going to talk to Marlon Butler after the meeting. So she got really nervous about the idea of talking to her dad. Just because, again, she doesn't know what's going to come out of the conversation, you know? But he did advise her that he had already told the father about the filing from that not New York, I'm sorry, that filing from the Chicago law firm. He did tell the father about it, and she, of course, was like, "Well, why didn't you tell me?" And he said, "I was trying to get more information." So he was trying to find out who the hell filed it, and he wasn't able to get that information. But he wanted her to at least know going into the meeting. So we switched to Van's POV, and he's done some research on all the board members. He knows that Mrs. Rose, she has handed in her resignation. She's 82. Um, she was actually going to sell her shares to Butler, but he offered her like 25 cents more on the dollar. So she went with Van. Also, her husband passed away about 5 years ago from Alzheimer's. And so apparently her and her husband were really great friends with Julia's grandfather, Herman. And so that clearly you can see where that research for that drug came from, wanting to try and cure it, or at least slow down the effects, shall we say, for people. So he talks with Julia, and she's going to ask for the financial from the past 5 years. She wants to know why the bank lost confidence in the company. It couldn't be just because of a wedding. So she wants all the research. And I'm like, okay, good. She's stepping into this. She's got her head on right. I like this. I'm like, this is how you need to stay. So she also told him she wants to stay in the city while she's going through all this information. She doesn't want to leave. And he says, okay, that's fine. I'll stay here too. We'll set up in the hotel. We'll set up some workspaces. And again, she doesn't want to stay with her parents. She offered to pay for the hotel where they're going, because she's like, it was my idea to stay longer. And he, of course, is like, no, 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 we're good. Like, he likes to spoil her, so he's like, no, he's got that. Julia talks to her dad. He looks beaten down, like circles on his eyes, worn down. And he's at the point now where he wants to merge with a company called Sinclair Pharmaceuticals. It's a smaller pharmacy, um, but I guess they're making real good strides with a PTSD medicine. And so he wants to merge with them. And he just tells her, like, we're tired, you know? We don't know how long we can keep going, you know? And he's saying things in DC, like they're fighting different Medicare stuff, which would pay for the drug, their Alzheimer's drug and stuff like that. So private insurance is paying, but it's not enough, all this type of stuff. And that, what did he say? He said something about Marlon has wanted, no, I'm sorry. She said Marlon's wanted to sell this whole time, and he's still not fully buying into it, which lets me think he knows what the plan is. He was okay with the plan. He's tired. So maybe Marlon wasn't trying to screw him over. He was doing what everyone had agreed to. Is what it's starting to look like to me. Is that you're ready to the fact that you're looking into selling and maybe you were a part of it, and maybe that deal screwed you up too, because the plan was for you all to get out. I don't know. Um she of course is like, this doesn't make sense. Like, the payment's been made of the 750,000. He's going to make the other 750,000 in 60 days. Like, we have more time. Like, this doesn't make sense. So the dad, what did he say? He said something. He was concerned about something. I can't remember right now. But he just kind of annoyed me because I'm like, he, I don't know. He just believes Marlon too much, and that just perturbs me. So she wants the different documents because, again, she's been trusting her parents, and clearly she's seen they haven't been forthright with her. And we find out she's never even seen that will. So again, we're abiding by something you've never even seen. Never even seen. So you got to think, when her grandfather died, she was 14. It was 10 years ago. Why would she know anything about it? So he, of course, is like, I'm going to be here with you, you know, period. The dad did want to know, I'm sorry, Van, she knows Van is going to be there with her. I'm sorry. That was her thought. Her dad wanted to know if she was going to stay at the family home, and she's like, no, she's staying at a hotel. And he was looking a little sad about that. And she also told him, if it comes out to it, if I've got to marry, Van today, I will. He, of course, is like, I don't want you to do that. She's like, again, this is not your decision, it's mine. Because he still calls her a little girl throughout the conversation. And again, it could be just his fatherly thing of doing, because he's been doing it for so long. Or it could just be him, just being a condescending asshole. I don't know. Either or, it's one of the two. While she's talking to her dad, she's, speaking with such passion. His father was like, you know what, maybe that'll help and give the board, some sway, because you sound like you're really ready. So Julia gives her speech. The butlers become very dismissive, as always. They're like, okay, next. Julia's like, no, we need to vote on me receiving the information. And they're like, well, you don't have enough significance or shareholder, you don't have your shares yet. They haven't been passed to you. So you don't get a say in this. So then our father stood up and said, well, I call for a vote. The Gwen woman, who is Marlon's wife, Skylar's mother, is like, she doesn't really trust Julia's judgment. She's like, you broke off in an engagement over a misunderstanding. You messed up thousands of dollars. You were supposed to be writing Mr. Sherman's memoir, but now apparently you want to put that on hold and jump into Wade, or are you going to put Wade on hold again? Like, I'm just very confused. Exactly what are you going to be doing? Because, you haven't really been trustworthy. That's a lot of shit. But again, she wants to rattle her. Like, if you see someone you've been able to control all the time, you want to use those tactics that have been used to rattle the shit out of them so you can get them back under subjection. So she thankfully did not let that bitch rattle her. And I was super proud. Julia was like, you're talking about personal issues that don't have anything to do with this, you know? And she, expressed how they have more time now because of that balloon payment that was made by Mr. Sherman. And so they do wind up giving a vote. It's deadlocked because Miss Rose doesn't have her votes anymore. She resigned. So then Van gets up, and Van starts talking because he's like, let's discuss investments, because Marlon was like, you have, investments in big pharma. And Van was like, and you do too. Let's go over all of your investments. How about we discuss that, with the board? And he's like, that's not important. I'm a trusted member of this board and all this type of crap. And he just throws his hand up, Van does, and Marlon shuts up. And he tells him, we'll be meeting after this meeting or whatever. He's like, but we're going to do another vote. And so he does the vote again. Guess what? Magically, this time Marlon changed his vote. So she's supposed to get the information. Um, the next piece of business, because he kept trying to say the vote didn't matter because the next piece of business was going to be the vote on the Sinclair deal. Well, Van tells them, check your email, everyone. He is like, Sinclair has withdrawn their proposal. And they, of course, are like, what did you do? You know, all this type of stuff. So he done bought shares into that company to shut down that deal. And I'm like, look at old Van. Because again, these are all ways that, the Marlon guy. I mean, I don't believe her parents are innocent at all, okay? But you just feel like the Marlon people are just at this, they're just doing something a little bit more icky. That's what it feels like. They might not be. They might just be working in with what her parents, the McGraths, want to do, but I don't know. We get a flashback 20 years ago. So Van had gotten a call from Lena. He's on her way to his apartment. I'm sorry, her apartment. Bamming on her door because the key doesn't work that he had. The locks have been changed. Logan Butler opens the door. He bursts in. He sees Lena in the corner, bruised, beaten up pretty badly. So he starts beating the shit out of Logan. So Logan's threatening to put him in jail and all this type of crap. And we get a little bit more information because Van has been doing research. So the Logan guy also made this comment to Donovan. He calls him Thompson. He's Thomas. He calls him his original name, saying it doesn't matter what fancy suits you put on, you're never gonna be anything, all that type of stuff. So boom. Remember when I said that Logan was the lawyer that took Lena's money? And Lena and her sister's money. So her sister's Madison. And then she went in business with this company called Infidelity. And I was thinking, like, why the fuck would she go into business with somebody who fucked her over? So this is what happened. She went to Infidelity to try and make up for the money that was stolen from her. She was not taken to Infidelity by Logan Butler. It was someone else that kind of recruited her that she had a contract with. Okay? Now, it's not supposed to be sex and all this type of stuff. It's supposed to be very, upper class, upper echelon. So just like a high escort service, but people pay for like long bouts of time. So her contract was for a fucking year. Okay? Well, the person that made the deal, his name was Nicholson. He signed her over to Logan Butler. So it had been a whole ruse for Logan to get back control over her. I'm like, damn, these people are fucking ruthless. So she's been under this fucking contract, and there's a few more months left on it, but clearly he's been doing awful things to her. So it's like, you not only take her money, but you want to get back control over her and then physically harm her. I'm like, this is absolutely insane. So that's how she got stuck back in business with Logan, because she was tricked. Um, he, of course, Van tells him all she got to do is go to the hospital, file a police report, and you violated your contract, and you're the one who'll be in jail. All this type of stuff, because Logan is a fucking attorney. So come on. And then he starts saying bullshit. Logan does, like, oh, maybe I'll just get the younger sister, Madison. And of course, Van hypes up, you're not going to do anything. That's my wife now. So he says he's never been married, but yet you're telling this man she's his wife. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So then Lena he tells Lena, go get your stuff. You're coming home with me. So Lena goes and gets her stuff, and they finally get out of there. And when he hugs Lena, he feels a pistol. The girl was ready to take old Logan boy out. That was her plan. She was going to wait until he fell asleep, and then she was going to take him out. Because she was done. She was not taking this treatment anymore. So she starts describing that she just sees green everywhere. And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she starts talking about like the ability to not need for anything. Like all I see is green, green envy. And she wants more. And I guess this is where they kind of get on that whole wanting more green envy, that whole vibe. And this is probably where their basis of their great friendship probably really began. Because they have the same thing. They want more than what they have. They never want to have to go without ever again. You know, they have a drive that everyone won't have that drive, right? But they've got it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's where their kinship kind of was born. Julie and Van are outside of the board meeting. Skylar comes up. He's telling Janie, the secretary, I got to get in there. I have important information and all this type of crap. So she takes the information in, but she won't let him in there. So then he sees Julia, and he's like, I didn't expect you to show up and all this type of stuff. And then eventually he sees Van, and he's like, you ruined the deal and all this type of crap. Because Julie was like, whatever you're going in there to tell him, we already know. So he was bringing in information to say, hey guys, Van is a shareholder in fucking, Sinclair Pharmaceuticals, but it's already too late. So Skylar is all venomous and saying, I don't wish you well. I hope I never see you again, all this type of crap. And it's just funny because like you were the one cheating with her best friend. But you're treating her as if she's the problem because she didn't sit there and take the bullshit anymore. She had the audacity to believe that she didn't deserve that type of fucking treatment, and now she's the awful person. I'm just like, these people are just absolutely amazing. Disgusting is more the word. So anyway, I digress. So he leaves. Van goes, has his meeting with Marlon. Marlon is, not in there at first. He's trying to do some little type of power play bullshit. Van gets to the point, and he says, when it came to Sinclair, I invested in them. No, I'm sorry. Marlon says he invested in Sinclair as a good faith. That was his reason for it. But the truth was he was double dipping, right? So when the merger would have hit, he would have been getting paid off of the Sinclair side as well as the Wade Pharmaceutical side. Cause you gotta think with him, it's always some bullshit. It's never, it never is, him trying to do good, right? Fan tells him, shoot me a proposal. I know you got to use outside counsel because you can't use Wade's counsel, and I'll make my decision from that. So, of course, this guy knows about Aphrodite, Greenscape, and Wolf because again, he was trying to acquire, those other 10 shares as well. So he knows about this stuff too. So he knows what he's gonna do. He knows Marlon's gonna try and go to them, see what kind of offer he can get from them, and then come back to Van and try and counter offer. He knows what he's gonna do. He's ahead of him. And so he's been doing his homework. So then he starts taking jabs at Julia, saying that his son dodged a bullet, saying that, the McGrath women seem to run cold. So this sounds like he was fucking with their mama, which is something I felt happened. So I don't know if they were fucked around before she got married or if they were having an affair afterwards. I don't know. He says his son, just basically started fucking around too quickly. He'll learn. And what did he say? He tried to get in his head again with that whole fancy suit statement. And I'm like, oh, so this is what they do. You don't belong. Doesn't matter how much money you make, you'll never be a part of us. But bitch, who wants to be a part of you? I just want your money. You know what I mean? He just wants to, you all fear him. And you're trying to get in his head. And it's like, why do y'all think this works? This doesn't work with him. Like, try something else. Trying to tell him he's nothing and all this type of stuff. That crap doesn't work on him. He no longer lives, like, even though he wants more, He doesn't live to try and be accepted into their world. In his brain, I'll just destroy your world, right? And you'll have to come to me for anything. So, but they're simple, right? Marlon, all of them, Gwen, Skylar, they're simple. They're very simple people. And so when you're able again to use certain tactics on folks, you'll keep trying it because he doesn't know anything else. We switch back to Julia, and she asked him, how the meeting went. He said it went how I figured, and didn't elaborate as normal. Um, they're gonna stay at the Waldorf Astoria. Um, they get upstairs. He's ready to fuck. She is too, but people still gotta bring up their luggage and shit. And so he tells her, he's made arrangements so they both can have like an office for themselves. And he's like, he's got a surprise for her. He's like, come with me. And she's like, always. So then we switch to Van's POV. He took her to a little diner so they could get some food. We find out he didn't tell Julia this, but he got some more information from Jeremy in regards to um what did he say? It was about the Marlins, not Marlins, the Butler's finances. So they have offshore accounts, cryptocurrency, a lot of things that if it went public, it could cause them to lose everything. So he's getting some really great ammunition on all of them. I love it. So he tells you, but he doesn't tell Julia about this. So he tells Julie he's got a surprise for her. She goes to the restroom. He had gotten a text message from Lena and a few from Connie, his assistant. And Connie was like, you're set up for a 3 o'clock appointment at Tiffany's. Lena was saying, she wanted to get together. So we find out she lives in Missoula, Montana. It was a recent move of hers. Apparently, they've got a budding technology bubble going on there. So she's involved heavily in cryptocurrency, as well as other kind of stuff. And so they're going back and forth. And then she is interested in catching up with Julia because she says she turns out she's met her before. He doesn't ask her how she met her, when they met. And he kind of just lets it go. And clearly she is in this city because she wants to get together. So she also says Jeremy apparently has, he's given her the, additional information as well. And Julia comes back from the bathroom and he just puts his phone in his pocket. We switch back to Julia's POV. They're walking, they're having a conversation, and then when she sees the Tiffany sign, she stops. And when it came to a ring, the one that Skylar got her was huge. And it was just for show, and it always felt very weighted to her. And he let her know, yes, I want people to know that you're mine and that we're together, but I don't want you to feel a weight on you. I want you to pick out something that you love, that you will want to wear all the time. You know, that's it. I don't want it to feel like some type of chain to you. And they went in and she was able to choose something she really liked. It might have been like 3 or 4 carats, maybe. I think it was like 3 carats. She didn't want anything massive. She wanted something classic looking. It made her happy. So they left from there. It was supposed to be ready in about 3 days. They went back to the hotel and they had their workspaces set up. Hers in the dining area and his in the other room. And also had other monitors and things like that. And so then he asked if she wanted to go down to the hotel restaurant. And she's like, what's the other option? He's like, we can catch up on work. She's like, what's the other option? He said, we can fuck on every surface in this hotel room. And he's told her, I want you against the window while the city watches as I fuck you and you come apart on my dick. And that did it. She's like, I'll choose option 3. He ordered some food. They fucked a little while. Then they started fucking again. And this time it was by the window. He fingered her, made her come. Um, did a little finger anal play. She was like, that had never been done, but it made her come super quick. And then they fucked again, and she wound up having to like wipe the glass because they had fogged it up so bad. And he came, she came, and then afterwards he asked her like, why did you wipe the glass? And she said, I didn't want people to miss the best part. I was like, oh, look at Julia. So we switched back to Van, but we're doing a flashback. We're going back around 20 years. Lena and Madison are living with him, and he's got a deal on the horizon that's supposed to set him up for pretty freaking well. So he's coming home to the apartment and he's hearing screaming. So he's thinking, oh God, Logan done got to him. He gets inside. It's just the two of them yelling at each other because Madison is pissed off that she's been stuck in this apartment and she is going ballistic. She's like, it's not fair. You two get to go out, but I can't. And they're trying to tell her Logan's dangerous. Um, he could come after you. And she's like, he's always been nice to me. And right there, I'm like, you know what? You're stupid and I don't care what happens to you because first of all, the man took your money. This guy beat the shit out of your sister, right? And you have the audacity to say he's always been nice to me. Throw her to the fucking wolves. I no longer care what happens to her. That's how I feel about her. We also find out she's been talking with Van's sister Olivia. And so he's got a sister named Olivia. He's got a brother named Philip. So we don't know what the parents did. We just know that he says they forgave him, but he couldn't. And he had to get the hell away from there. That's all we know. So she's like, I'm bored. That's why I talked to her. And she invited me to come down to San Antonio. Of course, he's like, hell no. And she's like, we're not really married. She just wears a ring because remember he had told Logan that they were married. And she's like, so again, she's like, no one's going to see it. So Lena was kind of like, it might be a good idea for her to go down there. He, of course, is worried about what his family's going to tell her. And so he's against it. So, of course, he says, the plans he's got on the horizon are going to change everything. They'll be able to move into a huge home. He tells her, I'm going to name my company after you. Like, I'm going to prove to you. And she's like, I don't care about money. I don't care about that. I just want to be able to feel free. I want to be able to go out and about. You and Lena get to leave this apartment. I don't. Imagine how that feels. And again, you see what's going on. You see what's happened to your sister. And yet, you don't seem to think that there's a threat. So that's when people stupid like that, just let them be. And if he gets her, he gets her. I don't even feel bad. Like, she annoys me. So the next morning, Julia wakes up before Van. She winds up putting on a shirt and she realizes it's been like 2 or 3 days. And her position at that company for the past year was really just for show. She does realize she should have asked more questions, but they also should have shared more with her too. And she is very much about being an integral part of this company. So Van gets up, he's dressed, and he's gonna go out. He says he has a meeting, he's gotta meet up with someone. He doesn't say male or female. And she of course is like, should I be worried that you're going to visit like some beautiful woman? And she had never been the jealous type, but then I guess after the experience with Skylar, she thought in her head maybe I should ask more questions. But again, this is where I go back to the beginning of the book where it was like that was the opportunity for you to demand an answer. Like, no, 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 no. You want to be with me? Then we need to have this clarified. There's not no, I just trust me. No, 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 no. You need to fucking tell me what's going on. Period. But she decides to do it with this, wanting to know where he is. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, where he's going. He winds up fingering her, making her come. He tells her, I want to make you come on my fingers before I walk out of here. And that is exactly what he does. He licks his fingers after she comes and doesn't go wash his hands. And she's like, I guess I shouldn't worry about you going to be with some other woman. And he's like, you sure shouldn't. So now she's thinking about the balloon payment, wondering, how did they not have longer to know that this was coming? Like, the bank did not call the loan because of a broken engagement. So that means that balloon payment was already looming. And something else is clearly going on, especially for Marlon to want to try and go ahead and sell. Everyone would have benefited, yes. Uh, Big Pharma would have taken over. That would have benefited her father too, because he seems tired, you know? So she's doing some more digging, and Van does let her know, like, don't let anyone take you off of your path. Like, this is what you want to do. Stay the path, you know? He's like, I hope it clears, your father, your mother. I hope so. If not, again, you just got to stay the path. He also told her there's a New Year's Eve party at her parents. She doesn't want to go. He had told the dad that they were going to come, but she's just not into it. She would just rather go back to Ashland and just be back in their cabin in their snow globe. He meets up with Lena. Lena's looking for Julia. He didn't say why he brought her, but he brought up Wolf Industries, um, and they were able to get like 5 shares off of them, but they still can't figure out who's that green sphere person, who's behind that SPAC. Um, she of course talks about sharing. They're talking about food, but it's not about food. It's about sex. Like, she wants to play with him and Julia. So apparently they did used to fuck, but he says that's all it ever was. She was just a good fuck, but they work better as good friends. Um, but clearly she still wants to play. So I kind of wonder, like, okay. Mm-hmm. So he tells her he doesn't know where Philip is. They can't find him. All this type of crap. And he asks, is Brooklyn okay? She says, you're not supposed to ask those questions. He says, I just want to make sure she's okay. That's it. He will not ask about Madison. He just feels like if he does, he's cheating on Julia. So she says she's fine. She's with Olivia. And she's like, that's all I know. So then Madison is alive. Because I was kind of thinking maybe Madison was probably dead or something. But clearly she is not. Um, Julia, the way she remembers meeting Julia, Julia was like a lot younger. She was a little girl, I guess, because she was with Logan before he turned out to be a piece of shit. She used to go around the family around for holiday parties, and that's how she remembers Julia as a little girl. So then we switch back to Julia. There's a knock on the door. A dress arrives, and so do some Jimmy Choo shoes. And clearly, they're going to this New Year's Eve cocktail party. So he comes in about 3 hours later, and she's like, okay, what's going on? Because when she hugged him, she smelled perfume. And then, of course, he brought up, you know, I think it was how she said it, I'm not going through that whole, cheating on thing. And he's like, I would never do that to you, X, Y, and Z. He told her, I met up with my friend Lena. I've known her for a really long time. XYZ. She won't fully, how do I say it? I guess she accepted what he said, because I guess she did tell him she would trust him. So that was enough what he told her. So then he breaks out the rings. I don't think it fully satisfied her, but then he broke out those rings, her engagement ring, as well as their wedding bands, and said this whole sweet thing about how, how they'll be great together, all this type of crap. And so she had a question about something with the balloon payment, and she's like, I gotta ask you about that before we leave. But she said, before we do that, I want to walk into that party freshly fucked. I said, well, okay. And that's what she winds up doing. So she asked him about this correspondence that she found uh, with the new banking officer and her mother. And I'm like, oh no, because I already don't trust the mama. So I'm like, this bitch done did something. So they get to the house, and she kind of wanted to know his opinion about it. He said, I'm sure it could be for a lot of reasons. We find out she had put the home up for collateral. So he was like, okay, because he's asking questions about the homes and stuff like that because he has real estate holdings as well. I'm like, what is this man not into? Um, they go and see her dad and they have a hug, and he of course is still with that little girl bullshit. And then she goes in, talks to other folks, and a lot of these people that are at this party would have been at that wedding. It makes her a little nervous showing up with the new fiance, with her new ring and stuff like that. But he was really kind to people. I mean, he shook the butler's hand. um I forget his name. He shook his hand, which shocked the guy because everyone treats them as the help, so they wouldn't do that, right? So the butler clearly liked him off the bat. So they meet, they see her mother. The mother's all, hi, sweetie, and all this bull crap. She's got a bunch of people around her, and she's like, oh, everyone, she sees the ring. Congratulations. My daughter, she's engaged again. And I'm just kind of like, why did you need to feel the need to say again? Like, you are trying to shame her. Let's just be very clear. You're trying to let people know she done got engaged again, like she was just engaged. Like, this is to shade her. So I'm like, you a little shitty bitch. Like, I do not like this mother. I'm like, come on. So then anyway, Skylar comes in with the brunette on his arm, and he called out to Julia, and I'm just kind of like, what the fuck you calling out to her? And you, last time you saw her, you told her, I hope I never see you again. So clearly he's on some bullshit. So Skylar introduces and says, oh, this is Elizabeth. So automatically Van knows, oh, this is Beth. So Beth is like, Julia, I really want to talk to you. That's why I asked him to bring me so we could talk. And Julia says, we really don't have anything to say to each other. And Beth was like, I'm just so sorry. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. And Julia grabbed her hand and she was like, she grabbed her hand with the ring, right? So the bitch could see the new ring. And both Skylar and Beth saw it, and they had a little look on their face. But she told her, I'm grateful to you. She's like, because if you hadn't done what you did, I mean, I would have been stuck with someone that didn't ignite the fire in me like who I'm with does, She was just going on, and I love it. And she's like, so thank you. And she told her, I wish you and him the best. No ill will. So then Skylar jumps in and he says, well, the baby is mine. There's no doubt about it. And we're going to keep it. And she tells them, great. I'm excited for you. Again, there's no ill will. And I feel like that's how it should be. When you don't give a shit, you don't give a shit. Like, you just don't care. And it's like he's trying to make her care. And it's like, why do you want to make her care? You didn't love her. You didn't want to really be with her. You're not going to tell me you want to be with somebody and you fucking their best friend. You don't. Okay? But yet you still want to evoke some type of emotion from her. It's crazy. Beth need to let it go. She needs to understand that what she did, you don't get the friendship back. That's it. I am not in, like, I mean, if she winds up reconciling with Beth, I mean, that's on her. But I think certain things you just don't come back from. And you fucking with somebody you knew I was about to marry, to me, is an ultimate, I can't fuck with you. You can never be trusted. Like, you shouldn't need to feel like I can't trust my friend to try and make a move on my dude. Even though I'm quite sure Skylar made a move on her. I'm sure that's what happened. Because Skylar's a piece of shit. But if she'd heard about the rumors, okay, Julia, I know fucking well you've heard about them. Because I'm quite sure you're out more. And yet you still chose to lay with him. So again, I just think she's a trash ass person. Certain things are just character flaws. We can't go, oh, this is a mistake. No, it's a character flaw. Something's wrong with you that you think that you can do that to someone and you get to still have them in your life. No, that's the punishment. You lose the person. So he wants to go upstairs. Van does. They talk to the house manager first because she was like, her name's Rosemary, and the butler's name is Arnold. That's his name. They're married. And Rosemary is the house manager, and so she went in there to tell her, "Hey, put us by Vicky," because that's who she wanted to sit next to. So then they go upstairs, they go to her room, and she was kind of a little skeptical about him seeing her room, because it's like he doesn't want her to she doesn't want him to think of her as a little rich little girl, but bitch, that's what you are. I mean, you just need to own it, in the words of Lisa Rinna, own it. That's who you are. That's what you grew up as. Like, it is what it is. So he wants to fuck her so bad, but he doesn't want to embarrass her. Like, he's done that before where he's like, fuck women, and then they come out looking fucked, and he wanted to embarrass them. He wanted people to know that he had just fucked them. He doesn't want to do that to her. So I was like, okay, good. You can control yourself sometimes. Um, he told her, don't worry about it. When we get to the hotel, though, I'm going to get you. So then, as they're coming downstairs, long behold, who do they see? Logan Butler, and he says, fuck Mr. Van. She sees Vicky, they embrace, she gets them through the crowd, and Vicky's like, we need to talk, so they go to the table, and Van's like, I'll get you all some more champagne, giving them a chance to talk or whatever. And Vicky, of course, was like, Beth and Skylar are here. She's like, oh yeah, I saw them, you know. And she's like, Beth is feeling uh pretty overwhelmed because I guess it's been World War III over at the Butler household. So the parents had told him to originally get rid of the kid. And then he was like, he's tired of letting him, run his life. And they were all like, he didn't seem to mind before. But I'm just kind of like, again, hate to play devil's advocate with this bitch. But you only can see what he allows you to see. You understand what I'm saying? So it could have always been a problem because clearly this has been boiling. Just because you didn't know about it, hell, you didn't know he was fucking your homegirl until you saw the text message. So my thing is, it doesn't mean that this hasn't been going on. It just means you didn't know about it. Sometimes people are not okay with things, but they don't necessarily show it in front of everybody. You know what I mean? So anyway, while they're talking, Logan Butler comes up and she gives him a hug, and she's like, "Oh, Uncle Logan." The hug felt creepy. It felt weird. She couldn't describe it. It felt off. And he tells her, make sure you tell your fiance congratulations from your Uncle Logan. He leaves. She looks over. She sees Van talking to Marlon Butler. And so Vicky's like, they know each other? And she says, yeah, from years ago, but I don't know all the details. So then, of course, Vicky's like, tell me how it is to be with the older man. And she says, I don't have anything to compare it to, but on a scale from 1 to 10, it's a million. A couple days later, they wind up going to, I think he had some homemade meals brought up from Mrs. Mahan because they had been having room service and stuff, and they were kind of sick of it at this point. So we find out a little bit about that relationship with the Mahans. So he met Bruce first. Bruce did work on his original house, not the one he's in now, but his original house, he did some work on it. And then Mrs. Mahan used to always come, and she would bring him meals to the office, and he would try and pay her for it, and she was like, nope, never, nope, nope, nope. So Bruce wound up going through cancer. They had really high medical bills. So when he made an offer on their land, he of course paid them this astronomical amount of money. And so they've always just been, he doesn't call her Paula. He says when they were introduced, Bruce was like, this is Mrs. Mahan. And he at first thought it was a matter of, oh, he's trying to like keep me in check because I'm a youngin'. But it was more so a respect, like this was his wife. And it was like a respect type of thing. And so he's always just viewed them with such respect, even though they work for him and stuff, which you shouldn't have you shouldn't be like no respect for people because they work for you. And they look out for him, and he, of course, in turn, he looks out for them. So it's like having a family. He had never seen one, he said, function that way, a very loving family. And so they've kind of become like his, you know what I mean? which I think is super sweet. They kept talking and stuff, and she made a comment about her, upbringing being basic, and he had to kind of remind her, you did not have a basic childhood. Like, just because, you know, you didn't do a ton of stuff, you had privilege, you had access, um period. And there's nothing wrong with that. And then she felt like, that's why I didn't want you to see where I grew up, because I didn't want to be judged. But it's not, he's not judging you, he's just saying this is the truth. You grew up with money, nothing you say is going to change that. But I guess because her issue when she was younger with friends, she never knew if they were like, once they came to her house, they would treat her differently sometimes, and she didn't like that. And Vicky was one of the one people that didn't change. Like, she was the same person, and that was kind of because her parents were super successful. I think one's a doctor and something else. So she was used to a certain type of lifestyle as well, so it didn't make her all like, ooh, you have money, you know what I mean? Whereas someone who doesn't have, sometimes they can be in awe of that, and they will react to you differently. So that's your own complex, you know what I mean, with the money. It doesn't change the money from being there. And you didn't have a basic childhood, you maybe didn't have an exciting one, and it probably would be considered exciting if we compared it to other people. And she needed for him to kind of, like, she got offended, she got upset, but I didn't really care. He really worked himself from the ground up, so he knew what it meant to really not have a ton, apparently, so he could kind of say that to her. But she was just kind of being like, I mean, you don't want people to look at you as a spoiled rich girl, and maybe you're not that, and that's okay, but then say that. But don't try and make it seem like you grew up like everybody else, because bitch, you did not. She's gonna go into the office. She was telling him she's gonna go into the office to speak with her mother and stuff. She's like, I'll just take an Uber, and he kind of looked at her and was like, no, like, you need to take the driver, Michael. Um, letting her know, she felt like you doing too much, right? Like, it's not required. And he tells her, like, I have made a lot of enemies. You know, when you acquire a lot of things, you will acquire enemies, and I do have serious threats, so it's not a joke. And so she's like, okay, fine, I'll take the driver. But again, you're telling her there's threats, but you don't fucking tell her where the threats are coming from and why they're coming. You saying a couple of deals, that's not good enough. She need to know so she can be on the lookout. You know what I'm saying? So he then tells her, um, like, I saw you talking to Logan Butler. Like, what did he say? And she just said, how it felt creepy to talk to him. But she made the comment, he's harmless. And then he says, he's not harmless. And then, but he doesn't go into detail. So that's his fault because, again, you're making a very declarative statement, but you're not telling her why you're saying this. Stupid. So then she asked about Olivia, his sister, and he goes, how do you know about that? So she says, and what brought up the sister thing was because when he was talking about Marlon, the older brother, that he always protected Logan and all this type of bullshit. So she told him, well, when I first came, Margaret thought I was your sister, Olivia. So I put two and two together, X, Y, and Z. So he says, this is where I'm asking you to give me time and space, not talking about it. She gives him that. So then he starts talking about the email saying that he had done a little bit more digging, and she got offended at first because she's kind of like, you didn't think I could find the answers. And he says, well, you're not a shareholder yet, so I can ask the questions with the bank, whereas you can. So the balloon payment was due 2 years ago. And this is when we find out the mother had put the house up for collateral. So she's trying to figure out, okay, what is, he's trying to figure out as well, what's the end game? Who's the one that's looking into this will? What is really going on? And basically, if she had married Skylar, she would have been responsible for the company. So then the company would have it's failing, right? So they would have had to sell it at the lowest price, but then that would mean was kind of fucked up because it means you're putting your child in harm's way. Like you wanted your child to take the fall for your bad business, basically. Because again, the company just didn't start failing. It's been failing for a while. So that falls on the motherfuckers that have been there. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, now even more so I look at the parents like, I don't think y'all are any good at all that y'all were going to put her in this position. That's just because, I mean, think about it. She wasn't involved in too much, so she just would have went in, and guess who would have said something? Skylar would have said, the business is X, Y, and Z. It's never going to work. We just got to sell. And she would have just did it. That's what was going to happen. It, a mess. Julia goes to see her mother. She didn't set up an appointment. She had called her mother's assistant, Kathy, and found out that she had this, free time. And she showed up. So her mother's like, of course, I wasn't expecting you. Did you make an appointment? She's like, no, I knew you had some free time, so I figured I'd come in. She's like, oh, no, my free time is for me to get caught up with all the parties and everything. I got to get caught up. And so her mother was like, we just need to have maybe tea at the Drake and all this type of stuff. And she's like steamrolling her, which is clearly what she's always done. And normally it's worked. But it's a new day. She's wising up a little bit. And so she's seen some things and she starts to talk. And she asked her mother, why did you give me only 20 months back? It was supposed to be further back. Her mother said, well, I don't really see the need for you to go any further. She started using all these different terminologies when it comes to the research, thinking that Julia didn't know anything. Well, Julia's been knee deep in files for days, so she knew about this stuff, and it shocked the shit out of her mother. And her mother said, oh, I underestimated you. But why would you do that to your fucking kid? You know what I mean? Like, why did you do something to try and make your child feel like an idiot? Like, why would you want to keep your child in that space? That's the part I just cannot grasp. I just can't. So she's telling her mom, I think it can still be a great company. It may not be the biggest, but, we can still help people. The mother's like, we were never going to catch up to the others, X, Y, and Z. And she realizes that what Van said about her parents being wealthy, but still wanting more, she had never realized that. She thought they had money, so they didn't want anything else. But yet, look at what they were doing. They wanted to be in the big leagues. So she's really just had, her fucking bubble pop. So she told her mom when she marries Vance, she is going to clean house. She's been looking through everything. This company is very top heavy. There's a lot of dead weight at the top. And what did she say? She told her kind of like, basically you're just trying to become rich for your friends. Make your friends rich. And her mother, of course, was like, it's easy for you to say when you're about to marry Donovan Sherman. And she says, maybe it is. But this is the reality. This is what's happening. And she told her, you better not sell my shares or try to, undervalue them. She hit her with a letter from Van's attorney letting her know, if you play any of these games, I'm coming after you. And she was still kind of, I guess, a little fucked up with the idea that her mother had done this to her, because she was like, the mother had said, like, it wouldn't have been that bad if you have married Skylar. That doesn't sound like a bad life. It's kind of the verbiage she used. And Julia says, you know what? When I have a daughter, the one thing I won't do is lead her towards destruction. And that's when I say, yeah, her mother's awful. There's no way around that. And she also let her mother know that she knew about her putting up the house for collateral. Her mom's like, how did you know that? And all this type of stuff. And it's like, yeah, you're still keeping secrets. You're still not trying to tell her everything. So, I don't know. Is it the mom trying to contest this will? I'm trying to figure this shit out for real. Because when she said something about the will, the mom just kind of shut down And it was just like, what is going on? Because I remember in the first book, the dad had said, if anything comes to whatever, I'll take the hit. And I'm like, yeah, somebody's been lying and has not been forthright. So I'm like, I don't know what the hell going on with this company, with these parents. We switch back to Van. He's having a flashback from about 15 years ago. And he's got on like a cheap tuxedo suit. He comes in the room where Madison is, and she's like, you can't see me before the wedding. He's like, he doesn't care. And she's like, oh my gosh, because he gives her like this huge emerald to wear around her to wear. And then he winds up fucking her, telling her, I want to come inside of you, and I want you to walk down the aisle with my coming you. And I was like, wait a minute. So I'm confused. Like, is this okay? Is he getting married? Like, what the fuck is going on? So then she says, when so he fucks her, leaves. When he gets outside, his sister Olivia calls Philip. But when he turns around, she knows that it's not Philip. It's Donovan. So I'm like, oh, so he's got a fucking twin. So Philip is his twin. So I'm like, oh gosh. So then was that girl, so is he tricking Madison by fucking her? Because we said we're going to wait until after the wedding. So what is going on? Like, is he tricking the girl? I don't know what the hell going on. This is getting more convoluted for me. So Olivia tells him, you're not supposed to be here. And he said some bullshit about he came to congratulate him or something like that. So then Olivia was like, you need to get out of here before Philip sees you or Madison. So he leaves because he wasn't trying to stay for the ceremony. He goes to his Bentley. And he says basically he knows, like, he's been fucking Madison this whole time. And he knows that she knows it's him. And I'm like, does she, or is she lying? Like, does she know? Because that kind of sounded like she didn't know that it was fucking him. I'm like, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. He knows her, and he says she's probably going to confess to him. So then she must have known it was him, and maybe she's just playing a game like she doesn't know it's him. He says she's going to confess to him because that's who she is, and that should start off their honeymoon with a bang. But then I'm like, why him and Madison aren't together? Why is she with Philip? Like, what fucking game is going on? This shit is just I'm trying to figure it out. We come back to the present. Van gets a phone call from Connie. Well, two things are going on, okay? So he's in a virtual meeting with a company that's like bleeding money heavily. Someone's embezzling. He knows it is. He knows it's somebody at the top, and he doesn't know exactly who it is. So he's thinking about lowballing them with an offer, and then he's going to clean house all the way down to the janitor when he obtains it. So then he gets a call from Connie, and she says that Philip's called again. And now he's calling her personal cell phone. And my thing is, why the fuck did he not call and talk to Philip when the bitch called the first time? Like, why not get his number? Why not do it? I don't get it. So then anyway, this time he asked for the number. And I'm like, again, you should have done this shit before, because it should have never gotten to the place where he's calling her personal cell phone. Which means he's digging into people that he knows are involved with you. And that means a bitch got a vendetta. A pretty damn big one. So he calls him from a track phone that he purchased. Dude doesn't answer, but on the third ring he does, and he says, hello, brother. He sounds completely unhinged on the phone, and the guy says he wants to meet his fiance. He says, I see you went and got a younger version of Madison. So Julia looks like fucking Madison now. I'm like, oh my gosh. And that will make me feel some type of way. Because is the pull that you really feel towards Julia because of who she is, or the fact that she looks like Madison, someone that you couldn't obtain fully? You know what I mean? Like, you fucked her, but you couldn't fully have her. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. This just all seems so goddamn weird. So the brother keeps telling him how he wants to meet his fiance. He, of course, is threatening him left and right. I'll kill you, X, Y, and Z. He asks about Brooklyn. He's like, don't you ask about her. You stay away from her and all this type of stuff. And I'm wondering if he's the father of this child. I don't know. I'm just so confused. But Philip is like, it's your fault that she doesn't have her mother because, it's your fault. So you don't get to ask about her. I guess that was part of the agreement that he can't come around. So then that even more so makes me feel like, so is he really the fucking father of the child? I don't know. It's just so much. I'm just guessing at this point. But we know Madison is alive based on the conversation he had with Lena. So she is alive. Now I'm wondering, is she in some type of mental facility? Did she just go rogue? Did she just not want to be a parent anymore? Like, what the hell? So after that phone call, he needs to be, near Julia like now. He's terrified of what his brother's going to do. But again, the first time your assistant told you he called, you should have reached out, especially when you knew that engagement announcement came out and that's when he reached out. You should have returned the phone call because now you don't know where the fuck he is. He's playing some type of game and you don't know what type of game it is. And yet, there's too many variables that are left open. You know what I'm saying? And he has this interest in talking to Julia. And I'm just like, oh gosh. We switch back to Julia's POV. She could tell something's off with Van. He was like, I was just so worried about you. She told him how the meeting went with her mom. He asked if she had to use the letter. She said she did. And she said it just resonated with her, the fact that, Van wants her to succeed. That's all he's wanted since he's met her. And yet her parents don't want the same thing for her. It's sad. She wants to go ahead and get married. She wants to do it in Ashland, in their cabin, and just invite, the Mayhans and Vicky. And so she says, we'll feed them nectarines and coffee. I'm like, ain't nobody gonna want that bullshit. And Mrs. Mayhan is not gonna serve it. I was like, that's y'all little tradition and y'all can do that together, but do not subject other people to nectarines and fucking coffee. Like, no. So then she goes to take a bath. He winds up getting in the bath with her. They have a talk. They're going to get married in like a week from Saturday. That'll give her friend Vicky time and stuff to get there, get anything she needs. She's going to be planning it with Mrs. Mayhan and all that type of stuff. He tells her, however you want it, that's how we're going to do it. He winds up fingering her till she comes, and then they fuck in the tub. Great little session. So they're about to head down to the cars because they're leaving out. They're going back to Ashland. And he gets a phone call, and he's like, okay, I'll meet you down there. The bodyguard is with her. And so she was like, oh, shoot, I forgot my purse. She goes back to get her purse. They go downstairs. Van's already down there, but this is a different driver. This isn't Michael. And so she's like, where's Michael? And she has this really uneasy feeling. And he says, oh, I decided to change plans. We switch back to Van. He gets a call from the detective. The detective is telling him that Philip is in Chicago. He just had a really large deposit placed in his bank account about 3 days ago. He's got a picture of him meeting up with someone outside of the city. He sends the picture to Van, and yes, it is Logan Butler. He of course is like, you find him now. I want him tailed until me and Miss McGrath get out of here back to Ashland. And another thing we find out, the detective guy said you're twin when he was speaking about Philip, and Van corrects him and he said, no, we're triplets. So Philip, Van, and Olivia are triplets. I'm like, oh my gosh. So he goes downstairs. Michael's there. He's like, where's Miss McGrath? And the guy was like, wait a minute. I left her with you. The bodyguard guy. He's like, I left her with you. And he's like, no, you didn't. And that's how it ends. So, I mean, clearly Philip's got her. But you know what? It is the fault of fucking Van. She should have, there are certain things, even if you're not going to tell her the full story, she should have been given enough meat of the story that she could have been on the lookout. But she doesn't know that you have fucking, that you're a part of a triplet. She has no clue of this. I'm just like, this is his fault. I blame him completely because he wasn't forthright with that girl, and now she's involved with some bullshit that clearly is his past, which is why I didn't understand why the fuck he just didn't want to tell her. Like, she's a part of this now. Like, she's a target now. So shouldn't you tell somebody why the fuck they're a target? You know, give them something. But so the next book in this series is called Gold Lust, and we are going to dive into that one next week. What did you guys think? Let me know down in the comments section. If you are in the notebook for a beautiful notebook or journal, I do have those available. The links are going to be available down below in the description section. Make sure you like and subscribe. Make sure you share. And as always, I truly do thank you all. Truly thank you all for supporting the Always Reading Book Club. Have a beautiful new year.